Welcome back. I am Andrew Meatrich, and today we have some numbers coming out of Germany that should genuinely alarm you. Only 8% of Germans believe their lives will get better. 8. We are going to unpack what that means. We are also looking at diesel crossing €2 per litre for the first time in 2 years, the European Commission rolling out a massive protectionist industrial strategy, a German Chancellor telling Washington that Russia is a colossus on clay feet with over 1 million casualties, a controversial politician demanding that Europe go crawling back to Russian oil, the Bundeswehr discovering it is short nearly 80,000 soldiers, and a corporate giant hemorrhaging billions because of a deal it made years ago. The most jaw-dropping part of all this I have saved for the very end. So stick around. And if you find value in what we do here, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. We put real hours into research and fact-checking because you deserve accurate information, not recycled headlines. If you want to go a step further, consider sponsoring the channel or dropping a super thanks. It genuinely helps us stay independent. Now let us get into it. Here is the thing about trust. When you ask people in one of the richest, most stable countries on earth whether they believe things will improve, and 92% of them say no, that is not a polling anomaly. That is a societal earthquake. The Edelman Trust Barometer for 2026 has just landed, and the numbers out of Germany are nothing short of devastating. Only 8% of Germans express confidence that their lives will get better. Let that sink in for a moment. 8%. In a nation that rebuilt itself from rubble, that powered the European economic miracle, that reunified against all odds, barely anyone believes the future holds anything good. And this is not just pessimism about abstract policy. This is personal. People are looking at their own kitchen tables, their own energy bills, their own children, and saying, I do not see how this gets better. The trust deficit cuts across institutions, government, media, business. They are all underwater. When a society reaches this level of collective despair, it does not just sit there quietly. It starts looking for alternatives. Sometimes those alternatives are constructive. Often they are not. But here is where it gets even more unsettling. This collapse in confidence is happening alongside something very concrete, something you can measure at every gas station in the country. Diesel has just punched through the €2 per litre barrier. E10 gasoline is hovering right around €2 as well. These are the highest fuel prices Germany has seen in 2 years. And heating oil, up 40%. 40. If you are a family in Bavaria or Saxony trying to heat your home and drive to work, your budget just got shredded, and nobody in Berlin seems to have a plan for it. The timing could not be worse. You have an economy that is already sluggish, consumer confidence that is already in the basement, and now you are piling on energy costs that hit working people hardest. This is the kind of environment where political extremism thrives. When people cannot afford to fill their tanks and do not trust anyone in power to fix it, they become susceptible to anyone offering simple answers. And that brings us to someone who has been offering very simple answers indeed. Sarah Wagenknecht, the leader of the BSW party, has stepped forward with a proposal that would have been unthinkable just 2 years ago. She is demanding that Germany resume importing Russian oil and restart the Nord Stream pipeline. Her argument is straightforward. German real incomes have fallen behind inflation by 10%. People are struggling, and the solution, she says, is cheap Russian energy. Just turn the taps back on. Now let me be very clear about what is happening here. Wagenknecht is not wrong about the economic pain. She is absolutely right that German workers are losing purchasing power. The 10% gap between wage growth and inflation is real, and it is brutal. But her prescription is essentially, let us pretend the last few years did not happen. Let us pretend Russia did not launch a full-scale invasion. Let us pretend energy dependence on Moscow was not the single greatest strategic vulnerability Europe has ever had. She wants to go back to a world that does not exist anymore, and the price of that ticket would be Europe's credibility, its security, and ultimately its sovereignty. But what most people miss about this story is that Wagenknecht is not speaking into a vacuum. She is speaking to those 92% who have lost hope, and that makes her dangerous, not because she is right, but because she is telling desperate people exactly what they want to hear. Now, let us shift to someone who was telling a very different audience a very different story. Friedrich Merz, Germany's new Chancellor, just completed his visit to Washington, and the message he carried was striking. He described Russia as a colossus on clay feet, a country that has sustained over 1 million casualties in its war against Ukraine. 1 million. Whether you look at confirmed figures or estimates, the scale of human loss is staggering, and Merz was using it to make a specific argument. Russia is weaker than it looks, and Europe should be increasing pressure, not backing down. But here is the part that reveals how complicated transatlantic relations have become. Merz reportedly had to explain to the American side that you cannot simply cancel trade with Spain as some kind of leverage against the European Union, because EU trade policy does not work that way. The fact that this needed explaining tells you something about the current state of diplomatic understanding in Washington. What Merz was really doing in that visit was positioning Germany, and by extension Europe, as a partner that will not be bullied but also will not be passive. He was essentially saying, we understand Russia better than you think, and we are prepared to lead on this. Whether Washington was listening is another question entirely. If you are finding this valuable, drop a comment and let me know what you think. Are European leaders finally stepping up, or is this all just talk? And while you're at it, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Every comment and share pushes this video to more people through the algorithm. Speaking of European leadership, Kaja Kallas, the EU's foreign policy chief, made a statement this week that cuts right to the heart of a growing tension. She warned that the conflict in the Middle East must not be allowed to push Ukraine off the agenda. Air defense systems, ammunition, political attention, these are finite resources, and right now they are being stretched between multiple theaters. Kallas was blunt. Both conflicts matter, both require resources, but Europe cannot afford to let one crisis cannibalize the response to another. This is a point that does not get enough attention. Every headline about escalation elsewhere is a headline that is not about Ukraine. Every air defense battery diverted is one that is not protecting Ukrainian cities. And Kallas knows that the political will to support Ukraine is fragile enough without adding competition for attention and hardware. She is right to sound the alarm. Now, while European politicians debate grand strategy, the German military itself is facing a crisis that makes all of these discussions somewhat academic. The Bundeswehr is short between 76 and 80,000 personnel. Let me put that in perspective. Germany currently has about 184,000 active military personnel. The target is 260,000 by 2035. That means they need to grow by roughly 40% in less than a decade. And they are not even keeping up with current attrition. But here is the detail that should really grab your attention. 304 cases of extremism have been identified within the Bundeswehr's ranks. When your military is both understaffed and infiltrated by extremists, you do not have a recruitment problem. You have an institutional crisis. Germany is asking its citizens to trust the armed forces at a moment when trust in everything else is collapsing. That 8% number from the Edelman survey, it echoes here too. And then there is Bayer. The German pharmaceutical and chemical giant just posted a loss of 3.5 billion euros. The culprit? Monsanto, the American agrochemical company Bayer acquired in 2018 for $63 billion, a deal that has become one of the most catastrophic corporate acquisitions in history. The legal reserves Bayer has set aside for Roundup-related lawsuits now total 11.8 billion euros. 11.8 billion. Every quarter brings new lawsuits, new settlements, new provisions. It is a financial wound that will not stop bleeding. What makes this story European is what it reveals about corporate hubris and the consequences of chasing scale at any cost. Bayer was once a crown jewel of German industry. Now it is a cautionary tale that business schools will be teaching for decades. And the irony is thick. A company that started by making aspirin for headaches has given itself the mother of all migraines. And now, as promised, the story I saved for last, because it might be the most consequential of everything we have discussed today. The European Commission has just unveiled a sweeping new industrial strategy that amounts to nothing less than an economic declaration of independence. Under this plan, European public procurement and government subsidies in strategic sectors, steel, cement, batteries, electric vehicles, will prioritize products made in the European Union. European money for European industry. That is the explicit message. Think about what this means. For years, Europe has been the good student of globalization. Open markets, free trade, level playing field, all the textbook principles. And now Brussels is saying, actually, we are going to start looking after our own. The trigger is obvious. Chinese overcapacity flooding European markets, American protectionism under successive administrations, and the painful realization that strategic autonomy means nothing if you cannot make your own steel or build your own batteries. This is not a minor policy adjustment. This is the European Union fundamentally rethinking its relationship with the global economy. The Commission is essentially admitting that the old rules left Europe vulnerable, dependent on supply chains it did not control, exposed to geopolitical shocks it could not absorb, and now it is building walls. Not border walls, but economic ones. The critics will call it protectionism, the defenders will call it survival. The truth is probably somewhere in between. But here is what I find most striking. This policy shift is happening at exactly the moment when German trust is at rock bottom, when fuel prices are through the roof, when the military cannot recruit, and when politicians are being tempted by the siren song of cheap Russian energy. The Commission is betting that the answer to all of this is not retreat, but reinvention. European industry, European jobs, European sovereignty. Will it work? That is the question none of us can answer yet. But I will tell you this. If Europe does not start making things again, if it does not rebuild its industrial base, then all the grand speeches about standing up to Russia and competing with China are just words. And people are very, very tired of words. That is what makes this moment so pivotal. The 8% who still believe things will get better, they are not enough to sustain a democracy. Europe needs to give the other 92% a reason to believe. This industrial strategy might be the beginning of that reason, or it might be too little, too late. Either way, we are watching history unfold in real time. Every episode like this one takes hours of research, cross-referencing sources, checking facts, making sure we are not just repeating what everyone else is saying. If you value that kind of work, your support makes it possible. A like tells the algorithm this matters. A subscription means you will not miss the next one. And if you're able to sponsor the channel or leave a super thanks, you are directly investing in independent journalism that answers to no one but you. Leave a comment, tell me where you think Europe is headed. I read them. I think about them. And sometimes, honestly, your perspectives shape how I approach the next episode. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about what is happening in the world. This community we are building together, it matters more than you know.